Hi, my name's Kevin McQuillan, and the following pre-recorded conversations are my attempt to make sense of the human experience through the practice of yoga. I hope you enjoy.
All right, it's day 13 for those that are in your teacher training, yoga teacher training, day 13. We're on the run to close. That's what's happening. Yes, we are. Only a few days left together. Kind of strange in some ways. It's been quite the experience. I could imagine it's still quite the experience. This week has been about the disciplines of being a teacher. And we've been exploring the disciplines of being a teacher. From experiencing real connection all the way to today's theme, which is generate inspiration, everything in between. That's the idea, is having the capacity to generate inspiration. And so if you call that forth, perhaps you also can instigate inspiration in other people. And that's the attempt of teaching. If that's not the attempt, what are you doing teaching? The attempt to inspire and get people interested in what it is you're teaching, whatever that may be. That's where things really start to change, inspiring other students to focus in on the content and the practice and make it their own and apply it to their own life. And that's where inspiration really starts to take off, when you start to see these practices in a way that can impact your life in a positive way. That's the idea. We've given you a lot of practices. Have you noticed that? And lots of opportunities to practice the practice. Not just on the mat, but you as an individual. And that's a key element to this practice. It's giving you an approach that supports you as a human being, that supports you being an individual in this world, which is so important. And start to define who you are as an individual. And it doesn't matter how old you are. It's beyond the point. It's like this moment in life, your life, where you are in life, and how to define yourself yet again, and how important that is. And take these larger concepts that we live in life and redefine them. And it seems to me some of you are starting to realize that some of the concepts and practices you had along the way aren't even yours. They've been passed on to you. If you pull them out consciously and take a peek at them, and you have, what you're starting to notice is that there's not much life in some of these practices and approaches you have. They're like this deadened energy. And these are the things we're attempting to cut away. This deadened energy or deadened approach or practices that you have carried with you for some time. And the consequence is that you're lightening the load. It seems to me that's what's happening here. You're becoming lighter, easier to be with, less noisy, much more still and quiet, and that's a beautiful thing. And if that's true for you, the idea is not to forget what this feels like, where you've lightened the load, you've become more still and more quiet. There's a lot of space in that experience. And so today's theme is generate inspiration. We'll explore this today for sure. Yes, we will. And there's some distinctions up on the board. I like distinctions and visuals. They help me for sure. The opposite of generate inspiration could be a lot, but the way I see it is remain the same. Choose to remain the same. There's not much inspiration in that. Clinging on to who you know yourself to be, clinging on to the past, being attached. There's nothing new in that approach. So we don't learn anything new. There's no new outcomes. There's no new experiences typically. And if one attempts to reveal itself a new experience, we become afraid of it. That's the unknown. No thank you. Where's the typical outcome that I'm so used to? And so remaining the same is like this deadened energy. And if you look at the approach of yoga, the practice of yoga, it's the death of self. When you lay out in Shavasana, that's the attempt. What are you allowing to die? And ideally, it's your identity, who you know yourself to be, which is a significant risk. Because then who would you be? If you're not who you are, then who would you be? It's a hell of a question. It's kind of frightening at times. But that's the attempt to position yourself into that space, often, versus remaining the same. And so up on the board, it's an automatic system. When we're automatic, clinging to the past, refusing to change, it's a system associated with defense, aggression, and withdrawal. Oh, wow, and we have explored that in great detail during our time. That's where you become the monster. The dragon comes out, hey-ya! Where you defend, withdraw, and typically get aggressive through that process. And that's been happening here. Perhaps unbeknownst to you, you've been playing that out in various different ways during your time here. And the importance of understanding this mechanism that lives within you, this automatic approach. On the defense, fear-based experience, people are a threat, the world is a threat, you're better off on your own, that kind of experience. And the pathological practice is being offended and less understanding. What a stance in the world. I'm deeply committed to being offended, and best you baby me, because my skin is thin, and I can't handle much. And if you've ever spent time with somebody that is deeply committed to being offended, it's very difficult. It's absurd in so many different ways because there's no way to have a conversation. They're too deeply committed to being offended. And there's no access to anything new. And that is not happening less, it's happening more. It's actually being taught how to be offended. And it's so absurd. And it's a very difficult stance in the world. Absolutely. And so the posturing is life is tough enough and give me a break. We spoke about that last night. Life is tough, give me a break. Where we abandon responsibility. Our responsibility as an individual, and we turn into the pleasure seeker. And you're all honest, very honest last night about how you do that. Pointless pleasure seeking. From a glass of wine, a bottle of wine, a bowl of popcorn. Lovely. To whiskey, to, I don't know, smoking joints and these kinds of things. How we abandon our responsibility. It's like, life is tough enough, I need a break, so give me this. I will shop, I will whatever. And we do it once, the tendency will do it again, and eventually it turns into a habit. I feel this, and so I do that. I feel this, so I do that. And we're so habituated, and that's a problem. It's great in so many different ways, but it's also a significant problem that we have as a human being, that we're so habituated. And how we train our emotional body to behave in particular ways. And so to understand how you've trained yourself to act in particular ways. And as we pleasure seek and continue to pleasure seek, we become destabilized and desperate. And that's how you came here. That's how you showed up here. Destabilized and desperate. I know that because I've spent the last 13 days with you. And been paying attention to you. In a whole host of different ways. It's like, I didn't come like that. It's like, yes, you did. And that's always waiting for us. Our ability to destabilize us is one choice away. One choice away you have to destabilize yourself, and you know it. And now you know it in great detail. And how important it is to remain stable as much as we can, because the consequences are heavy when we destabilize ourselves. And compiled, they lead us into places we don't want to be. And again, last night, some of you, all of you, explored that side of you. It seemed to me you didn't really like the outcome in some ways. And some of you shared how you've led yourself into very dangerous situations based on this practice that I'm explaining right now. And sometimes we don't survive those dangerous situations we put ourselves in by making poor decisions, abandoning responsibility. So I always appreciate breaking things down and noticing, yeah, where do we take ourselves? And is that a good idea? And this has nothing to do with not having fun. That's not what this is about. It's about choosing wisely and why are you choosing what you're choosing? And how are you left feeling based on your choices? And that matters. I'll give you a brief example. Well, we'll see how brief it is. Hopefully brief. Many years ago, I started to realize how wrapped up I was in myself and how I was isolating and pulling myself away from people. And I did that through work. And it came very clear to me that I was so wrapped up in myself. I was just so tight, so rigid. It felt like I was going to have a heart attack. That's what it felt like panic attack kind of experience, like so pinched. And it started to become very evident that I didn't know how to support myself. And I knew about a teacher training, and I applied to it. And it was late, and I got accepted, and it's like, whoa, that's nice. I got accepted to this thing, so I guess I should go. And that was my way of like, you need help. You need help. You don't know how to help yourself. That's the conversation I was having with myself. Clearly, that's true. That you're challenged and things are not going well for you. And pay attention to these symptoms and what's occurring. And there's heart issues in my family. My grandfather died very early from a heart attack. My father has had multiple heart attacks. And that was in my head. It's like, whoa, aha. You got to wake up here. You got to pay attention to this. And so that teacher training I went to was in the US, in Montana, in the mountains of Montana. It sounds so lovely. And it was quite lovely. A rustic setting. And it was a very profound, all these emotions when I go back into the past. It was such a profound experience for me at this particular teacher training in so many different ways. This one moment, I was like with a group, and it was all women and then me. There was like, I don't know, like 6 of us or something like that. Sitting at a picnic table down by this lake, beautiful setting, incredible day. And we were talking about these various different experiences, and I was sharing mine of how tight I was and how unhealthy I felt. And what ended up happening through that experience of me sharing myself, because that's not typically what I did. I held everything. That was one of the reasons why I was in the shape I was in. I was suffering in silence. And what was so profound in that moment is like I fell apart. That's what it felt like. And I wept for like, it felt like days. And I couldn't remember the last time I just like fell apart. And especially to do it in the presence of women, it was like, that was like a no-go zone. Because it was like the worst fear of like, this is not going to go well. I am going to be vulnerable and then ridiculed and probably humiliated. And I'll just slink off into the lake and drown or something like that. And so this fear was so present. But to my astonishment, they stayed and listened, literally held me. And allowed me to be that. And that was such a weird experience for me because it absolutely shifted the way in which I saw women and my posture with women in that moment. From this fear-based experience to what the hell is going on here? This is very strange. That I can actually feel safe, which is something that I did not experience. And it was like immediately I grew up in that moment. From this scared little boy, hiding in the bathtub kind of experience to like, whoa, this is a different level of presence. There's something odd with this. I'm seeing the world differently. And how immediately that occurred. And it gave me something to work with. And what it allowed me to work with was the experience of being nurtured, which is something that was lacking in my life. I had no idea how to take care of myself. Zero. Like feed myself and stuff. It's like dress myself. It's like the basics. But in terms of nurturing myself and taking care of myself, I had no idea. And in that moment, what ended up happening is my relationship to women changed from a threat to a teacher, which was significant. And I've leveraged that in my life, that women now, and have been for quite some time, are the greatest teachers in my life. To the greatest threat, to the greatest teachers. And it happened all in that moment. And what transpired in that teacher training was starting to just wake up that much more. And a couple days later, I heard this story about a monk. Maybe living on top of a mountain, I'm not too sure. Probably. But there was a story that was laid out about this monk. That monk, this particular monk had been to this particular teacher training months previous. At the end of this teacher training, this monk realized how he was hiding. Behind his ideology, his robes, his approach. And it was such a colorful, interesting story. And what struck me was, wow, I am also hiding. I am absolutely in hiding. And I don't have a robe and these kinds of things, but what I do is I have facial hair. I have a mask. And it came to me so clearly. And this story was told just before a break. And I had facial hair. At that moment, I had facial hair for as long as I could grow it. I don't know, maybe 19 years by that point or something like that. Oh yeah, that's part of the story. Can't miss that part. So at the end of this teacher training, this monk gathered his stuff, his beads, his robes, his whatever he had, his literature, and he burnt it. He threw it in the fire. It's like, be gone. And as a way to reveal himself. No more hiding. That stance, that's the part of the story that really struck me. It's like, wow, that's possible. That act of revealing oneself. No more hiding, and that declaration was so fascinating to me. And it's like, yes, I am hiding too. Behind this thing, this mask, this hairball on my face that I've been growing for so long and was deeply attached to. And on that break, I went up to the bathhouse in this rustic setting and shaved off this thing. Oh! And it's like I was looking in the mirror going, who is this guy? I haven't seen this guy in like 19, 20 years. It's like, who is this individual? And I didn't even recognize myself, and it was so bizarre. And my younger sister was there with me. And I remember the look on her face when she saw me. Because she hadn't seen this for a long time either, this face. And her look on her face, she's like, it was just so like, who is this guy? Didn't even recognize me. And again, it was just like this recognition, this feedback of like, whoo, wow, I have been hiding. And it was my declaration of like, okay, enough. I don't speak because I don't want to be seen. I don't make noises much because I don't want people to look at me. And all these tricks I had, costumes and masks I used to have, and still do in various different ways, but it's like, okay, how do I pull these things away? And after that break, I remember walking back into the room and there was, I don't know, like 80 people or something in this particular training. And it's like people didn't even recognize me. They just kept looking at me. Even the teachers, it's like, who is this guy? It was so bizarre. And I had been with him for several days. It's not like I just dropped in. And in that session, I was called on to teach. And that experience will forever stay with me. Because it was my way of revealing myself, and to do it through the practice of teaching. That I want to be seen. I have things to say, and I want you to listen to me. And that inspiration stuck with me. And I integrated it through teaching. And I remember saying to myself after I taught, it's like, I'm never going back to who I was, ever. I haven't had facial hair since, and that was quite some time ago. And this commitment is still ferocious in me. And why I take teaching so seriously? Self-preservation, absolutely. How to keep myself on the right track. To never forget where I came from and the suffering and experiences I had through suffering. To never forget that. And so I can continuously leverage those experiences and suffering I was in to move myself into places I want to go. Because that's less concerning for me now. The future, the unknown, versus what I already have had. And I think that's true for each of us. If you really unpack how you've suffered in your life. And so that was a very profound experience, like a week. Like a week, it's all these things were coming up. One led into the next. And what I noticed in that week, I literally shed weight. Physical weight. When I went home, I was married at the time. I drove up, my wife came out to me. She turned around and ran. She didn't even recognize me. Not only was this, like this new individual, but I had lost at least 15 pounds. The emotional weight I was carrying was significant. It's like, whoa, another lesson of how this is all connected. And so generating inspiration is no simple act. Necessary indeed. To pull yourself out of the past, and that's the attempt. And up on the board, it's different distinctions. It's a system associated with approach and challenge. Approach and challenge. That's how we have to move into the future. That is horrifying, fear-based, fear of the unknown. I'm going to approach it anyways. Where we get to undo and rebuild skill, which is so important. And some of you have been speaking to this. What are you willing to give up to get something new? And that has to happen. You have to cut something away, which is painful, to pull something in. And there's a different approach to this and a different stance. I accept that life is tough and difficult, and it is tough and difficult. I choose to embrace what I say and what I want. I missed a word, but that's okay. I get it. I embrace what I say and what I want anyways, even though life is tough and difficult. I'm going to choose these things anyways. I choose to be alert, engaged, and alive. And that can happen through practice. Every time you hit the mat, that's the consideration, is how to become more alert, engaged, and alive. You know what's waiting for you if you're just sitting going through the motions. Do. In anything. You're strengthening a mechanism inside of you that will take you places you don't want to go. And it's very quick. Have you ever drove and it's like, I don't know, like blacked out or something, or just got caught up in thoughts like, how the hell did I get here? Where am I? I don't know this neighborhood. I'm way off track. If we can do that in driving, we can certainly do it in life. And that can happen very easily and quickly. And how important it is to stay on point. And best you have one, so you can orient yourself. And so today, it's the ability to generate inspiration. And an element to that is to take care of yourself. To do that. To give yourself exactly what you need. You're noticing how you change so often. Oh, I got a pain here, so best I modify. Or, I don't know, an upset belly or something like that. Best I rest out. These kinds of things. We're constantly changing, and so your practices also have to change. What a day it will be today. Wow, what a day it will be. We have practices ahead. We have ceremonies today. We have plenty going on. And so a question for you. What are you aiming at today? What's the experience you're after today? What are you aiming at? What are you looking to generate? Who's got something to say about that? What's an intention? What's a commitment? What are you aiming at today? Pull yourself around. Who's got something to say? To tease your answers out of you? Yes, hi?
Strength and acceptance.
Strength and acceptance. That sounds delightful. Yes, indeed it does. Who else? What do you got? Yes?
Letting go.
Letting go. Thank you for that. Who else? Yes?
Fortitude.
Fortitude.
Responsibility.
Thank you. Fortitude, responsibility. Very nice. Who else? What do you got? Put yourself out there. If you say it, it might come true. Yes?
Staying present, engaged.
Okay. Presence, engagement. Very nice. Thank you. Consolidation.
Of all this.
Yeah, all this wild ride. It's been a hell of a ride, hasn't it? So let today be the day. Resist remaining the same. Pull yourself into the present moment. And that's the attempt, from the present moment to the future, from the present moment into the future. Speak like that too. Resist comparing yourself to yesterday, your practice from yesterday, your kriyas from yesterday, this from yesterday, 3 days ago. Resist that practice, the comparisons. Limit it, because it immediately gets you in the past. And so stay out of it as much as you can. And it requires great discipline to do such a thing. Present into the future. And it is practice time. And we will move into practice where you get to be with yourself. Extraordinary. And it's certainly nice to be with you. Take yourself on. Soon this will be over. All right, everybody. See you on the mat.